Hello, I'm joined by Vice President for Equity, Inclusion, and Leadership Development, Don Sawyer. We are here today to talk about, your experience, how everything's been during your time here, how the DCGE office and Title IX office has grown, and your experience just as a whole. So to start things off, could you talk a bit about your experience and what you've accomplished, what you feel like you've gained out of being here at Quinnipiac?
What I've gained. So I came to Quinnipiac in 2012 as a faculty member in sociology. And so I wasn't doing diversity work in the sense of like it wasn't my job, but I did it because I was interested in it, right? Because I believe that a campus, specifically a campus related to higher education, has the ability to train students to go out there and really solve problems of the world. And so whether it was in my classes, I always tried to make sure I had a DEI lens in my classes. And so as word got out, that was my focus. People started to call on me to do different things. And sometimes I got a little bit overwhelmed because I had my regular job, and then I was doing the diversity stuff. People were asking me to be on committees and advise student groups and things of that nature. But I was passionate about it, so I did it in addition to my teaching. And so, coming here in 2012 and then looking at the institution and, 10 years later, it's not the same institution that I came into, and I think we've made a lot of strides. We have a ways to go, but I think that we've done a lot of great work.
So in your time, how has the DCG office grown from when you first started your role, and when did it all begin? Like, when did the idea of, or even the conversation of diversity get put on the table?
So I think diversity was on the table ever since I got here. But I think some people would argue that it was a conversation that wasn't being had all throughout the institution. Again, this is in 2012. I came into my current role, if I'm not mistaken, I think I came in 2018. And so there was a time, this shows the growth, right? There was a time where if you typed in on our website, diversity, it took you to research on zebrafish, right? It didn't go to any equity and inclusion report that we have now. It didn't go to a DCGE site. And so over the years, we've built up a web presence that's internal facing and external facing to kind of show and highlight the work that's being done. And so again, I think the difference now is that we're talking about DEI at multiple levels of the institution. It's not just a few people here and a few people there, from the Board of Trustees to the president's leadership team, to the deans, and to people throughout, the campus. People are asking about DEI and what it means for our institution as we move forward.
Okay. So how have conversations around gender equality, color, and race evolved at Quinnipiac?
So I think they've always happened. And so one of the things I talk with students about is like, we used to call them like roller coaster revolutionaries, right? That when something nationally happens, people wake up and want to be invested and interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion because that's the hot thing to do at that point in time. There have been people who have been working on gender equity. There have been people who have been working on, other issues of DEI, LGBTQ+, concerns all throughout this time. And at certain periods of time, it gets a heightened attention, right? Specifically, if you look at what happened in summer of 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the racial awakening that they were calling it. This work has been being done, but people start to get interested all of a sudden because it was the sexy thing to do at that moment in time. But, those of us who have done this work for a long time, we understand that it'll go up and then the interest is going to go down until the next thing happens. But there are those of us who are committed to this work that we work through the peaks and in the valleys.
Mm-hmm. During your time here, name a few of the drawbacks in the past that have been resolved or are on their way of being fixed.
I could think of two. One is that the university, we didn't have a full-time Title IX coordinator. Like we had a person who was the Title IX coordinator, but they had a full-time day job that wasn't Title IX. And so, there were people who fought to say, hey, this is something that we need. I worked closely with, I think it was Terry Johnson, Monique Drucker, to continuously push the administration and let them know, this is something that we need. Because with Title IX, if you don't invest in the front end, you usually pay at the back end, and the back end is usually related to lawsuits, right? And so that's not what we want. And so in order to make this campus conducive to the success and safety of everyone who will be a member of our community, we thought that having a full-time Title IX coordinator would be important to show that we were serious about this. And so a few years ago, we were granted a line to be able to hire a full-time Title IX coordinator. And so we hired our first one. We had her here for 2 years, and then now we have our second Title IX coordinator. And then beyond that, we've also grown and hired a civil rights investigator to work along with the Title IX coordinator. And so we hired 2 great staff, Dennis Cortang and Sarah Hellier, who are here. And so that's one of the ways that we've changed. Another way is the development of the reporting system that we have, where if someone experiences an incident of bias, there's a place for them to go where they can submit the report. There's a protocol that's in place, similar to the Title IX process. We can go and submit a report. And so those are 2 changes that I would say that we've done. We still have to tweak some things, but I think those are in a good place.
Okay. Tell me a little about the Title IX office progress. Like, I know you added all these positions, but from the start, like, how do you think it's gotten better with these positions being added?
So I think it's gotten better because you have people who are dedicated to looking at Title IX and civil rights issues and concerns, right? So if a report comes in, people know that someone's going to be there. Not saying that there weren't any people there before, but we know that we have people who are committed, who are hired to do that job specifically. In a perfect world, would we have more people? Absolutely. But the fact that we have 2 people right now, in addition to other folks that we work in concert with in human resources and athletics, we have a pretty solid team of people who are focusing and making sure, again, that the campus is safe and conducive to the success of everyone who is a member of our institution. And so, there's a lot of education, that's been happening. Right now is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and, Dennis was out, I believe he was with Erin, riding around on the quad, like, giving out bandanas with just information about sexual assault awareness, having people wear teal and different things like that. And so we don't want Title IX to be seen as a place that you go to when you're in trouble, right? We want to be proactive and preemptive in the ways in which that we disseminate educational materials into our community.
Okay. Is there anything you would want to tell students who think that the university is still behind, in their thinking or in the policies that have been placed for when it comes to Title IX or when it comes to anything around diversity and inclusion, those kind of conversations?
I think it's important for students to reach out and talk to us. There are a number of students who know me and know me well and know that I have an open door policy. A lot of students have, fortunately, and sometimes I say unfortunately, have my cell phone number where they can send me a text. But I just ask that students reach out, right? Like, we're approachable. Like, if there are issues, we can't be everywhere, right? And so if there are issues that are taking place on campus, we need people to come forward and let us know. Because if something is not working, we need people to let us know that it's broken so we can indeed fix it. And hopefully we'll be getting more of that information now since we've opened up our Inclusive Excellence Campus Climate Survey that opened last week. And so hopefully you and your fellow students will do us a favor and fill it out to let us know what your experience has been related to diversity, equity, and inclusion on campus, because that's going to help us set a baseline to let us know what's working, what's not working, and the places where we need to grow.
I think looking at a more personal lens, I would want to ask, your time here, obviously you've been here for like so many years.
It's not been that long. August, it'll be 10 years. I just got a notice that I'm going to be recognized for being here 10 years, and it's went by fast. So yeah, 10 years in August.
I think, yeah, you have, however, done a lot of positions in the 10 years. Like, you have gone up and, finally being a vice president. How do you think it has helped you personally?
So the thing is, I like to let people know that when I came to Quinnipiac wasn't my first job, right? So I was already in higher education for about, 13 years at the time that I came here. And so it was my first job as a faculty member. And then after getting tenure, I came back over to administration. Some people are like, why would you do that? But part of it is I love teaching, and I also love the administrative part of the institution, because I believe in higher education because of what it did for me and what it did for my family. And I hope that I can create an environment where other people can realize that same success that I did. And so that's one of the reasons why I stayed. So I've been in higher education for about 23 years. And it's benefited me because I think it keeps me young, and it gives me hope, right? Because when I meet with students and I work with students who are dedicated, right? Not just to their major, but students who are, asking themselves, what are the problems that I want to solve? Like, what is it that I want to be involved in, and not just focus on, their major. Like, that gives me hope, right? That keeps me young, right? Because I have to keep up with what, they're experiencing. And so even, someone like you said, that you plan on going into coding, and yet you're doing this. And so it shows me that you are a well-rounded individual. And when you go into coding, that's not going to be the only thing that you know. That's not going to be your only experience. You'll be able to add so much to that. And so I love it when I see students doing those things, when I see students in the class, having those aha moments. That's how it has benefited me. It keeps me with my finger on the pulse. And being, the other thing I'll say is the fact that I've been a faculty member and I've gotten tenure. I've been on the administrative side. I've been in student affairs. I've been an RA. And so as I've moved up in leadership positions, I'm able to have conversation with people from all over the university, because I understand what it's like to be an RA on a Friday and Saturday night. I've been there. I understand what it's like to be a resident director. I've lived in the residence hall. I know what it's like to advise fraternity and sororities, because I've done that. I know what it's like to do student activities, because I've done that. I know what it's like to be on the road and recruiting and enrollment management, because I've had the opportunity to be able to do that. And like I said, I know what it's like to be in the classroom, but then coming and being on the senior level, it's a whole new world, right? Because I get on the president's cabinet, and then we shut down and we're dealing with COVID. So it's like, wow, what a welcoming gift, that I received. But I've been learning and growing, and I'm grateful.
That's wonderful to hear. Is there any specific experience, during your time here that you feel like will forever stay with you?
That will forever stay with me. Wow. That's a great question. That will forever stay with me. I think seeing people realize their vision, right? And so, I had a student who was a mentee. He's an alum, Esau, right? And so, we connected because I saw some of myself within him. And I remember, seeing him trying to do everything and please everyone. And I called him into my office to have a real heart-to-heart talk with him, to tell him, like you need to get it together, because all of these things, they're not going to be on your diploma, and you can't burn yourself out, right? And so, later on, as he's about to graduate, he reflected on the conversations that we've had, right? Because a lot of times as an administrator or someone who works in higher ed, you have conversations with students, but you don't know if anything sticks. You don't know if they're like, okay, old guy, whatever, old dude, but to see, his growth and different things like that. Like, again, like that's why, I do this. Like, okay, someone is listening. There are times when at the end of a day, I'll say, does this work even matter? Like why am I doing this? And then I'll get an email from a student that was in my class 12 years ago and say, hey, professor, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm doing this in my life. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because of that assignment that you gave me in my senior year. And I really took that and it changed my perspective. And I'm like, wow, right? And so those are the moments where the universe reminds you that this work is important. And so those are the types of things that I take away and that will stick with me when I think about my experience here at Quinnipiac.
Okay, that is really all the questions I have. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
I just think it's important I always tell students this, that it doesn't matter where you are right now. Like, your current situation doesn't necessarily dictate where you're gonna end up, right? I'm a sociology professor, and then undergrad, I got a D in Introduction to Sociology. So there was no way I thought I was gonna be a sociology professor. But again, your current situation doesn't dictate where you're gonna end up. Coming from the neighborhood I came from, I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to have a doctorate coming from that neighborhood. I wasn't supposed to be a sociology professor, but I had people who planted seeds. I had, people who guided me, people who mentored me and helped point me in the right direction. And so I would tell students, make sure you get a mentor, make sure that you're active on campus because the skills that you gather are transferable. And the last thing I'll say is if something is not right on campus, specifically with DEI or any other thing, reach out to us because we can't make a change unless we know what's wrong. And if we're not listening, make sure that we listen and be persistent. And I'm committed to doing that and creating the campus environment that we all will feel like we belong.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone. For Q30 News, I'm Hepzibah Rajan.